I thank you so much for coming. I'm Debbie from Country 103.7 from the Charlie and Debbie Show. We work in the afternoons, in case you haven't heard, but I think that most of you are winners of our prizes, and so we appreciate you coming. And this is a live Dishin with Debbie. And I thought a really good thing to start with today would be something that's good for a big game day party. Anybody have parties planned for watching the big game that's coming up? Any of your teams in there? You don't care? Who are you rooting for? Chiefs. Okay. Well, this is good for a party. This is good for anything like that. It doesn't have to be a game, but just hanging out around the house. One of our favorite things, we are originally from Texas, and so fajitas are a staple in our household. And so what I have found is cast iron is a fantastic way to do fajitas that are going to resemble what you're most used to in the restaurants, to get that good sear on the meat and a good char on the vegetables and everything. So I thought you can do fajitas, but for a party it would be great to turn them into nachos. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get the fajitas going, and then after we're done with them, we're going to layer them with some cheese, put them back in another skillet, and you can put them under your broiler and you can melt that cheese. And so then everybody gets a good serving of hearty nachos. So I'm just melting a little butter and a little oil in the pan here. Get it nice and sizzling, and we'll start with our vegetables. I like to do the onions first and get that good caramelization on them, and that way they have a good flavor. I think that's the best way to do. And I've done some ahead of time just so we'll kind of move things along, but just to get the idea, this is what you're going to do, and that'll just take a couple of minutes depending on how high your heat is to get a good brown sear on those, get those caramelized. So anybody have any favorite recipes they like to do in cast iron? You like to cook in cast iron a lot? Anybody ever try it? I mean, there's so many things. Cornbread, so many things you can do in cast iron skillets. Yeah, cornbread's good, right? That's a staple too. But I have found that they are so versatile, and they hold the heat so well. And you can see this is getting done pretty quickly. And I love this little induction burner top too. That was also available at the Lodge Cast Iron store. They let me borrow this for this demonstration, and it's my first time using it, and I just loved it. I fell in love with how quickly it works. And then we got that going, so we'll go ahead and add our peppers in there. Start getting a good sear on those. If you find you need a little extra butter or oil, you can do that if they start to look a little dry. So I add just a tiny bit of that. Get a little bit more butter in there. This is, it says right now on this little burner here, it says it's about 250. So if I were doing it on my cast iron skillet on my stovetop at home, I usually do it between a medium high and a high. You know, I like to get the really hot heat on it to get that brown sear really quickly. But then with the onions and the peppers, you can cook them down for a long, long time, because I don't know about you, but with my fajitas, I like the vegetables cooked really well, cooked really down, so they have a lot of flavor. In fact, I am going to add a little bit of salt in here. I don't need too much for this recipe that we're doing, because the chips and the cheese and everything, they're going to be pretty salty. But you do want a little flavor. I just kind of season as I go. And so you get those as good and soft as you want them. And when I'm at home and I have two burners, I actually have vegetables going in one skillet, and I have another cast iron skillet that I'm just doing the meat in. And so that moves the process along. And also that way, if there are some people like my picky son, my teenager, who won't eat the vegetables, you know, he's the only person I know that goes to a Japanese restaurant and says no vegetables. You know, that's my favorite part. But that way you can keep them separate if you like, and people can help themselves and add to it if they want, or they can just avoid them altogether. So those are looking pretty good. So I'm going to put them in with the rest of what I already have cooked. And we'll get going with the meat here. Can you smell it? Anybody especially on the front row. I know that's probably... All right. Now what we're going to do is see if we need just a little more oil in there. And we're going to do the meat. Now, the way I like to do the meat, and we usually do chicken as well. Today I'm just doing steak. And you want your heat up, to a good level. And that way you're going to get that sear when you first put it in the skillet. And then I don't turn it until it's got that good brown sear. And don't crowd the pan either. I went ahead and did a first batch at home simply because I wanted to make sure that I could just do the little bit in here and not crowd the pan, because once you crowd the pan, it seems like they get too close together, they start to steam. But if they have room around them, they're going to get that good caramelization on them. So that's what we're going for here, because when you go to a restaurant and they bring it out to you, it's on a sizzling platter, right? And that's what makes it taste so good. So we're going to get these going, and then I've got a secret weapon that you may have your favorite fajita seasoning, tried and true, that you use, and that's fantastic. You use whatever works for you. But just an accidental discovery. It was a happy accident that I found this Stubbs cooking sauce in the grocery store, and it's not necessarily meant for fajitas, but I had it in my pantry one day, and we were doing fajitas, and I said, well, I just think I'll just use that, and we've never looked back. We've kept doing it every time we do fajitas. That's the only way we do them, and I think you'll love it if you want to try it. And it says hatch chili, and you think automatically that's going to be super spicy. But actually, it's really not too bad. It just gives a nice flavor. And it comes with a seasoning pack. I already had one open because I made some of this at home. But in the package here, you'll see, it comes with a seasoning pack, and what you'll do is you'll just sprinkle that over the meat, whatever it is, chicken or beef that you're using. And then it's got a cooking sauce. It's got 2 pouches in there. It's got a cooking sauce, and that's what you use to cook the meat in until it's done. And then after the meat is to the temperature you like it, and typically with fajita, the skirt steak that we're using, I like to do like a medium rare. So I'm going to let that cook a little bit till I get the temperature I want. I'm starting to smell that a little bit. Making you hungry? Okay. I think that's looking good. So then what I like to do is take the finishing sauce that comes in. And like I said, if you're using your own recipe, your own spices, you totally do that, up to you. But I just love this. And you may not use the whole thing depending on how much meat you have and how big your portion size is. And then I'm going to add back in, this is where those vegetables that we've already cooked and put aside, we'll add those back in so they can soak up all that flavor. And get those good and covered with all that sauce and seasoning, and let that cook down a little bit. If you feel you need more sauce, go right ahead. And then once we start layering the nachos, we will put them back on here. You would put them in your oven and do like a broil so you could get the cheese all melty and the chips warm. But for our purposes, I tested this with putting the skillet back on here and covering it with a lid, creating kind of a dome steam thing. And that helped to melt the cheese just enough. And then you can top it just like you would any nachos with lettuce, sour cream, salsa. I like to do a squeeze of lime, maybe some cilantro if you like. And so with this, I think we're pretty much done with this part. Get that all warmed up from the vegetables that were resting. Okay. Going to get my little puppet here. Put this over here. Does anybody have any questions about anything? All right. Got those going. Okay, we will cut this down a little bit because we don't want to burn our chips on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a layer of cheese, because you can never have enough cheese, right? That's the way I look at it. Put a layer of cheese on here. And we're just building flavor. Building flavor. And who doesn't like nachos? You know? Like I said, you could totally do just a fajita bar, let everybody serve themselves, but I thought this was kind of fun for a game watching party. Okay. And then I think we will scoop this with a slotted spoon so we're not getting too much of that liquid in there. And we'll just cover this. That's going to help melt the cheese too. And then we'll top it with some more cheese. And I like to cut the vegetables and the meat when I'm doing this for nachos just a little bit smaller than you would for fajitas, because you're going to be picking it up on the chip. So that way it's a little easier to eat. Almost done. Okay, I think we're good with that. Now we're going to top it with some more cheese before we put the dome on it. And then we will let that melt in there. Looking good so far? Okay, and there's my lid. So we will put that on there. We'll crank the heat just a little bit and let that kind of hang out there. And we should be ready in just a sec. And then we'll top it with our favorite toppings and we'll be good to go.